3. Okay, that's good.
Kate, you're live whenever.
Okay, whenever you tell me to start, I will start.
You can start now.
Okay, thank you. Hi. Okay, welcome people. We have some COVID and March break issues in terms of attendance today. I'm pretty sure a couple of our members are on March break, although I'm a liar because I thought Craig was one of them. And he just popped in, so we have our quorum. Robin Graham has COVID, not feeling well at all. Hello, Craig. And Ashley, I think, is coming, but we'll see how that works. This meeting is mostly an information educational meeting for us. There are a couple of issues that we'd like to, that I, the royal we, would like to look at as soon as I find the right documents. There we go. Okay, so we'll start with welcome, which we just had. Our land declaration that we are grateful and with great respect that we meet on the land of the Mi'kmaq First Nation. And also we note that there have been a couple hundred more graves found on sites in a school or two in Ontario, I believe. And we are very heartbroken about that, but we note that too. Okay. Declarations of conflict of interest. Did you come into a lot of money this week, Craig, or anything?
I did not.
Okay. No conflicts for you. I did not. I went the other way, I think. Okay, so we'll assume there's no conflicts of interest. Approval of the agenda. I have one other business piece that just came to me as I was talking with Ellen, and that would be under other business, replacing Jamie McDonald on the committee and what our wishes are to do with that, plus is there a process for that? So when we get to other business, we'll get to that. Anyone else have any other business? Okay, we'll assume that there is none. Okay, approval of the minutes. The minutes of the meeting on Tuesday, February 15th have been circulated. Brilliant minutes, I thought. Is somebody who, well, we were all there. Can somebody make a motion to approve it? Approve the minutes?
I can move.
Okay, I assume that was Bill. And seconder?
I can second.
Okay, I'm picking Craig. Okay. Okay, second by Craig. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
You gotta say it. Okay. Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay. Business arising from the big business arising from those minutes is that council approved the STR regulations, which they did a while ago, but they also approved, since our last meeting, the 1 month, or the 1 year grace period, which is one that we had recommended, and enforcement will begin in the end of March in 2023. So I think as a committee, we're probably quite happy with the way that all has gone down. And like to also note that Alex and Robert, this has been a lot of work, and it's still a lot of work. But to thank them for those efforts in getting the city into the position that we are in terms of short-term rental and bylaw regulations. Now, moving on to discussions, I would like an update on where we are with enforcement. Like, what's the plan for that, or the timeline, or whatever? Who wants to go?
I'll tackle that, Mr. Chair. So on the issue of enforcement, when council approved the the bylaw and official plan policies, and that's to clarify for the STR industry how regulations will be dealt with moving forward. But the other component of that is we need to prepare a licensing bylaw and a summary proceedings bylaw that would be the enforcement side of it. So Cox and Palmer are working on that. I suspect, unless it can be done earlier, I would anticipate we'll likely see those documents, both of them will be dealt with at the same time. It's the creation of separate bylaws. The summary proceedings bylaw is a corporate bylaw. It's not only exclusive to STRs, so it needs to encompass a wider breadth of issues than just dealing with STR regulation, but it will hopefully have, and I'm sure it will, some real clarity in regard to how we're going to enforce the STR operations moving forward. So that's where we are on that. The direction of council is it all has to be in place and complete by March of 2023. So we would like to sort of get that done sooner than later, and not leave it till the last minute, because clearly the industry is going to want to move forward very quickly, and people will be looking for approvals, I suspect, early in 2023, even prior to them being approved. But they're going to want to get their approvals and make sure that they're all registered up. So we would like to make sure that that's all done and in place. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have one clarifying question, because I can either write or I can listen, and I was writing. You said there's two types of bylaws in development, or regulations in development for this. One is all encompassing, that will be an enforcement bylaw for all the enforcement regulations for all the bylaws. And
Correct. Yep.
And your second one, I whiffed on it. What's the second one?
The second one is a registration bylaw.
Okay.
You need to be registered, and those two bylaws will work in tandem. The key thing is those that will fall under the summary proceedings non-compliance. It'll have to do with they're not properly registered. So there'll be a specific section in the summary proceedings bylaw that deals with STRs exclusively. And one of those key things is that you need to be properly registered, or you're in violation of the bylaw.
Okay. Questions? Thank you. Questions for Alex?
The summary proceedings bylaw then is really a registration bylaw.
No, it's different. The registration bylaw is, you need to be, when you come through the city and you get your approval from both the city and the province, you will be registered. You'll be given, you'll be given a number that you're properly registered to have that land use. The other bylaw, which is the summary proceedings, it's the legal side of that. And if you don't follow the zoning bylaw, you're not properly registered, then it'll outline how the city will proceed to enforce and to take you to court.
That's a corporate bylaw, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a corporate bylaw. It's like for all issues. We have a bylaw enforcement officer, and those are tools that we already have. But there's an opportunity. Our concern is an issue right now is to deal with STRs, but our lawyers may update it in some other fashion to deal with other issues that the corporation deals with on a regular basis. But it all needs to be updated to bring these regulations that were approved by council into force and effect in the appropriate time, which is the end of March of 2023. And we would like to, technically, maybe if it did get delayed, we could bring it in January, but we do not want to, we don't want another deadline to be pushing up onto the new one. It's going to go live at that time, and we need to be prepared for that. So that's our anticipated dates to deal with. That would be hopefully, in early fall or sometime around there to get it moved and approved.
Thank you.
More questions for Alex before I hit him with 43. Okay. Greg, nothing? Greg, nothing. Okay. And,
Sorry, I'm muted. No, I'm good.
okay, great. And Paul, any more questions at the moment?
No.
Okay. I have a couple. Who's paying attention to STRs that are operating without a license starting in March next year?
Well, that would be us. We have those tools. We were the first adopter on PEI to get the tool to find these things. So we're continuing to use that tool. We can still monitor activity until that date, but there shouldn't be a problem there. We can locate them, and that's been for municipalities who've tried to move into the space in the past. They didn't have the tools to do that, so we found what we needed. We found that a long time ago, and that's the tool that identifies where these where they're operating from.
Will that responsibility to seek these out and then address the situation, give a summary offense ticket or something, will that responsibility just be added on to our present bylaw officer or officers? How many do we have?
We only have one, but it'll likely, a lot of that will fall back to us. But it's such a small town. I mean, most of we would rely on neighbors will call. Neighbors call here always, and they ask. Yeah. They'll just say, "Does this, like, well, I have a concern. Is this property next to me? They seem to be running this type of operation. Are they registered?" Well, we can just quickly check that. And if they're not registered, we can just check the scraping tool to find when we have the civic address to be able to determine are they showing up on any listings. I mean, the listings, that scraping tool is pretty comprehensive, and or the neighbors as well. They look it up and they tell us, but we also get a list of properties that we would be from the scraping tool, and it takes a little bit of work to identify them, but we feel that we have the tools that we need to get this implemented.
Okay, I'm still thinking about the bylaw officer. So we find a few, I don't know if we're anticipating a lot or a few, or very few. We find a property that's not registered. What's the procedure for the bylaw officer? Does he go to the property, or she?
Well, and again, I don't want to raise expectations. He'll be doing it. It'll likely be us, because there is some knowledge, and there's two issues that because of the recent changes at the provincial level, you can't get a provincial license unless you get the municipal license. So if you're sought out, maybe the province finds you first. They're using the same scraping tool. So if they find you, you're not only in violation of the provincial regulations, you're in violation of the municipal regulations. But our summary conviction bylaw will be the tool, because they're in our jurisdiction. We will be seeking, to bring them into conformity or, deal with it that way. But it's most people don't really want to operate. If you're using these platforms, and Robert's got more information, he can jump in if I'm not correct on this, but the expectation is from these big platforms is that you've got some kind of a license, and they're going to want to, when you go on their sites, they likely are going to realize Charlottetown's got a bylaw, and in order to be properly listed, they're going to ask for your number, your registration number, because other people are going to be giving them that registration number, which is going to indicate you're good to go at the municipal level, and presumably you're good to go at the provincial level. So we suspect most people don't want to be in violation if you're renting your home. Some people will always be in violation, but most people that are in that business don't want to, I don't think they will want to expose themselves to a problem, because if something happens and they're not registered, we don't know that they're there, they're in violation of the bylaw, that all blows back onto them. It's their problem, their responsibility. It's our responsibility to find them and shut them down as expediently as possible. But and again, the platform, if they're on a platform and they're not properly registered, there could be, I'm not sure, but there could be some issues for the platform as well. Why didn't they ask or seek the approval at the local level, particularly when they'll know which municipalities have regulations and which ones don't.
So the platform, you mean Verbo or Airbnb or somebody like that?
Sure. And again, they're trying to, they're trying to, improve their image as corporate businesses, and it's in their interest to make sure that they don't have, that they're not providing a way for illegal or unregistered entities to be using their platform, because that's going to bode doesn't bode well for them as a business.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, Robert's maybe review, like there's still some formulation of that bylaw that needs to be done, but I would defer to Robert if there's anything that I've communicated that he feels is not perfectly accurate, or but I think we're okay.
Okay. Thank you for that, Alex. I appreciate it. Robert, anything to add?
Point of clarification that I will provide the committee, and this is conversations that I had with provincial tourism. They basically told me, and I have this in an email, that they will not issue new tourism licenses for properties that haven't already obtained one without confirmation of municipal approval. But it appears that they will still renew existing ones. So for the existing units that haven't obtained approval from the municipality, but did gain approval through provincial licensing in years prior, they could perhaps still operate.
How can they still operate if they're in violation of our bylaw?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, is that they sought a legal opinion, and that legal opinion was forwarded to us. But I can't get too much specifics on that. But the way they see it is that, or the argument that's been presented is that provincial approval trumps municipal approval, since municipalities are creatures of the province. So, by ways they try to argue that they already have, or they sought their approvals that are required. The PEI Tourism Act is clear that it's up to the applicant, so the STR operator, to obtain approvals, and that doesn't fall onto the province. Now, the province has been working with us within the existing legislation and some of the amendments where they won't issue new licenses to these properties, but we're still going to have, I think, a heck of an enforcement issue when all of these regulations come to enforce in effect, because we have, like hundreds of these apartment units scattered not through just the city of Charlottetown itself, but highly concentrated in the 500 lot area. So we're going to be, it's going to be quite the project to tackle, and certainly when it comes back into enforcing compliance, we'll have to have a robust enforcement bylaw, as Alex mentioned.
Okay,
yeah, and regardless of the province, I mean, look, the province is the province, and they're a different level of government. But when the new bylaw comes into effect, everybody is going to need to comply. Somebody may take us to court. Maybe something gets sort of clarified. I'm not sure, but our position is that everybody needs to comply. As of March, the end of March of 2023, and we will be pursuing those that don't comply. And something, it'll invariably end up in court, and we'll see how how we're doing in regard to our enforcement tools.
The city can request that the province respect the city's bylaw and not issue automatic renewals within the city, right?
Well, it's it has to do with that whole issue. We're a creature of the province, and the province is also trumped by the federal government. So they're going to do what they're going to do. I mean, we'll see as we move forward. There could be some more massaging, more discussion on this. I think a lot of our discussion is premature. We'll know in the fall when we get more more clarity in regard to our ability to regulate this and how we're going to deal with it. But I think just for today's meeting, I would just say that, look, for our part, we're not anticipating any issues. I mean, we're the authority having jurisdiction on that item. For those that don't have approvals, I mean, we will be pursuing them.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, complaints?
Is it, Alex, is it fairly foolproof? Like, can you how easy, I guess maybe, I haven't thought about it at all, but how easy would it be to try and do this without being properly licensed?
Oh, well, it just doesn't make any difference whether it's a zoning provision or whatever. Most people comply. Most people on, in every municipal bylaw. But you need to be prepared. For those that don't comply, you need to have the tools. Now, there's no doubt that the provincial government could give us a lot more room, because everything we do, and that's what most people don't understand. At the municipal level, you can't do anything unless the province allows you to do it. So that's where all of the power flows from. It's from the provincial government to us, to a municipality. So they need to say
They don't have any autonomy then, I guess. No. Yeah.
What was that, Bill?
Oh, I was just thinking, we don't have much autonomy over the province at all, and we are a creature of the province.
Yeah, no, and that's a term, that's a constitutional term that's just not me. That's exactly how they describe it. Is that we are a level of government that's created by the province and through the province. We're not a separate entity. The federal government is a separate entity. They're a separate entity, but so all municipality, every zoning bylaw provision flows from the province. So when we go to IRAC, it all starts at the province. Did the province give you the ability to do what you're doing? So that's the opening volley when you're at IRAC. Do you have the authority to do what you're doing? And then they will link you back to the Planning Act, which we operate under, and we have to be in compliance. So we can't have rules and regulations that have not been given the space, I guess, by the province, and they would have an act or they would have some kind of an authority that we would follow to make sure that we're not getting outside of the bounds of the authorities that were provided by the province.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, you were wanting to say something?
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you for that. It's something that this committee will keep an eye on for sure. The Affordable Housing Incentive Program. We all got to look at it. We got to look at it a few months ago and dropped on our desk and say, "Here, what do you think of this?" Within 10 minutes, and we didn't think much of anything about it because we didn't have time to go through it. The major facets of this, perhaps we can have just a quick review of that.
I would defer to Robert on that. Robert's a little bit more knowledgeable on the incentive program, so maybe he can clarify that.
Okay, great. Just the ballpark look at it, Robert.
Certainly. So just a brief summation of the Affordable Housing Incentive Program is essentially to encourage affordable units being created in the city of Charlottetown, and that would be either standalone affordable units or mixed with market rate units, such as Bill's development there on Patterson Drive. Essentially, what the incentives, what it does or what it provides is basically bonusing provisions. So allow developers, if they're incorporating either what's defined as affordable units to our definition, which is provincially subsidized units, or units that obtain CMHC funding, can apply and gain additional bonusing, so height provisions within the 500 lot area. So we could be looking at increasing the height, reducing parking requirements, the requirement of a design review to ensure the development is compatible with the surrounding area. Those costs are covered by us. We also rebate building permit fees at the occupancy stage for any affordable unit in that development. And then the last large incentive is operated through the city manager's office, and that would be the tax increment financing, where properties basically are exempted from municipal taxes based on the affordable units provided on said property. And it's a sliding scale between years 1 to 10, and that decreases as time progresses on. So those are kind of the high-level incentives that are provided to affordable projects or projects that incorporate either a CMHC component. Now, there was some discussion with council in regards to does CMHC qualify. When this incentive program was first implemented in 2018, we came out with a set of bylaw amendments through the zoning and development bylaw to define what affordable housing is, the bonusing provisions, parking reductions, exemption from permit fees, and we've been maintaining that it should only apply to provincially subsidized projects or units. However, there has been some discussion, debate in council recently on whether that should be extended to the CMHC low interest loan construction grant. So there's still some, I think, details to be ironed out. I'm working on a couple of affordable housing projects currently, and I have some that are coming back that apply through the CMHC grant. So there's some discussions internally. I think that staff have to get clarification from council on what applies if the incentive and basically if the tax incentive applies to these other CMHC programs as well, or if it's just going to be applied to provincially subsidized housing as stated in the zoning and development bylaw. So that's kind of just a high-level summary of the incentives that were provided and some of the discussions and current events going on around that affordable housing policy. And I can take any questions. Thanks.
Is there what's the city's definition of affordable housing? Because it's referenced inside the policy here.
Certainly. So basically, do you want me just to go through and just kind of read it off to you?
Well, is it inside the policy that's here, the incentive program?
The incentive program itself, it's defined through the zoning bylaw, but if you go to eligibility under, it's on page 1, we do reference kind of the criteria that you have to adhere to in order to be qualified for the incentive program. The other thing too is that when the applicant or the owner enters into an agreement, we develop a contract that's registered on title that has to be then verified by the provincial government that they also have a contract of the number of subsidized units and the valuation of those subsidies provided. Once that's done, it goes through to the city's manager's office for final sign-off, which he then issues a letter of acceptance or not. But essentially, what the requirements we have is that it's deemed affordable housing as defined by the City of Charlottetown zoning bylaw. You can see that under eligibility requirements 2 subsection B. And then in our zoning development bylaw, we certainly do define affordable housing as housing that has obtained some provincial subsidy. And if you want, I have the bylaw here, and I can actually just go through it and just read it out to you so that you get kind of a full account of what we define as affordable. But it's defined as any type of housing whereby provincial government provides some form of subsidy or rent assistance, including public, nonprofit, cooperative housing, or rent supplements for people living in the private market housing. So that kind of gives you an indication of the projects that will qualify for these incentives.
So obviously that would include people that had if they were in some sort of a social housing building, that they pay 30% of their income. So the province would be subsidizing that, right? That's included in that.
Yes, I believe you're referring to the rent geared to income ratio, and that project would certainly qualify as well for these incentives.
I would say, looking at the program, is that I think the city has a shortage of housing, period, but social housing or the really lower end is really short. The eligibilities that the survey, based on the CMHC quarterly market survey, says that you have to be 5% or less to qualify, right? What we already know, even if the vacancy rate was higher than that, we already know that we don't have enough social housing geared to income in the city to make it more affordable for people. So I'm just questioning the vacancy rate at this point in time.
Yeah, I believe when I was there during discussions with council, they were basically looking at installing a threshold in the policy when that kicks off, because as you can imagine, 10 years of tax increment financing, like it can be quite impactful, I guess, to the city's budget in the long term. Now, the other rebates and bonusing, those are just zoning requirements that I think incentivizes not only just subsidize our affordable units, but also tries to encourage density and encourage more units in general, because that you're correct. What we need is more units and certainly more subsidized units. But that 5% threshold was just installed in there just basically as a best practice on, when does a city have generally a healthy vacancy rate? And that's usually been pegged at 5%. So that was just inserted into the document that based on the vacancy rates that's projected out by the government, once it hits 5%, then the incentive program shuts down. But as you guys know, vacancy rates usually they're only issued on an annual basis, so it should be around October, the fall of that year. But I've been noticing in the last couple of years that those vacancy rate numbers have been more delayed coming out, and I think also that there's that's a whole bunch of issues with collecting data as well with provincial and the federal government, how they look at occupancy. But that aside, that is basically the explanation for the 5% vacancy rate in the policy.
Is this the area where you have to meet the CMHC definition for the 30% for affordable, rather than the other definition, city definition?
I would say that. Yeah, I would say that we're kind of looking at it more from the perspective that if you're applying for an incentive for bonus height, so if you have strictly just CMHC funding, either a low interest loan grant or financing, you could apply for more units, but that doesn't necessarily entitle you to more of the incentives, like say the tax grant, for example, and that's still, there's some, I think, internal discussion going on about that. But that's how that would be applied. We would be looking at truly affordable through the definition of the zoning bylaw, because at the end of the day, this is an incentive program. So it's a policy adopted by council, but what we have is a bylaw, and so the bylaw had to obtain ministerial approval through the province. So that's why that policy is directly correlating and referencing how we define what affordable housing is, which is, again, more provincially subsidized projects. But that's not to say that if someone wanted to increase their height of their building and they obtain CMHC funding without provincial approval, they could still apply, but they would have to follow then the definition of CMHC's affordable housing, which is 30%.
Yeah, so
I was just going to say, with King Square, we have, about 200 clients, and we all operate under the 25% rule for everybody.
yeah,
And yeah,
so
and Bill's project is an excellent example, and it was one of the first that went through this incentive program, where that's the type of development that I think we're trying to encourage, is that it's always better to mix affordable or subsidized units with market rate units. There's a myriad of reasons for that from a planning perspective, and even from a social perspective. And so that's kind of the incentives that we're we're pushing. That's the kind of development I think we're looking for. That's not to say that, you know, we've had some applications, like smaller applications from the province that are looking at converting some of their properties that they've purchased or acquired to provide affordable or subsidized units for the clients off their rent assistance list. So again, it's trying to be a very flexible policy and encourage affordable housing where possible.
Thank you, Robert. Just as a matter of interest, though, when we first got involved with Martha Place, we call it now, at Patterson Drive, yeah, we were very concerned about the stigma attached to the mix of market and subsidized. But we discovered there's no stigma at all. Beautiful.
And truly, I think that's kind of the end. I think the end game is that, you know, one of the big reasons to encourage those mixed market unit types is the developments is to encourage that, and because, you know, there is no reason why, you know, we're all humans that need a place, a roof over our head. So it's not to say that you can't live together and everyone can get along, but that's certainly, you know, projects that we're always trying to encourage is those mixed unit, mixed income level projects.
Yeah.
Oh, I've just figured out where Patterson Drive is. Good. Okay. Roaring into the 20th century.
96 Patterson Drive.
Got you right there, right by the dog park. Okay.
We called it Martha Place because the sisters gave us $900,000.
Anyone ever went back in history in this province and looked at the contribution of the Sisters of St. Martha, I think they'd be just blown away when you added it all up. Not, that's a huge money, but every other thing they've ever done that had repercussions many years later, kids that went to that university. Okay.
Yeah, they're incredible. I have Sister Rosemary McDonald's on our board now. She's fantastic.
I know her. Yeah, she is. Robert, I'm going back to where I was for a minute, and tell me if I'm wrong and why I'm wrong. So if I want to establish a building development and apply for the Affordable Housing Incentive Program, it sounds to me like I have to meet the provincial standard, which is the 30% of income. Is that accurate?
Again, it depends on the incentives that you're applying for.
Yeah.
So if you're applying and you just have CMHC funding, then we would say, well, you have the opportunity to have like the bonusing, so the density increase provision. So you can, you know, theoretically you could put more units on the property, but then those units would have to meet the affordable definition of CMHC's definition.
Which is 25%.
And if you were going to apply for the province and it was like provincially subsidized, then we would open up those incentives to more, and that could also include tax increment financing. But again, like I've said, there's been some discussion around council on whether those tax increment financing provisions should also apply to strictly CMHC funded projects.
Okay, and there's nothing anywhere in the world that says when you apply for a development, when you start a development, what rent you have to charge. Like, people get approval for all sorts of rents or all sorts of projects, but I realize it's anti-capitalism to say what your rent ceiling is or your rent floor is.
In your business plan, you have to tell them what rents you're going to be using, so that when they look at your business plan, it makes sense. So it will be viable.
Okay, so that has to be there.
That's correct. So usually developers, when they're approaching either the federal or the provincial government for funding, they have to provide some sort of pro forma. So it's some sort of financial review to ensure that the development can remain solvent for a number of years. And the province has made contributions, in ways of either monetary funds to help with the upfront construction costs or subsidies afterwards. But essentially, when they enter into that contract, they actually have to provide the rent rolls. And so that's basically like the amount of rent they would be charging per unit for those affordable units. That's why there's been such a huge discussion on whether CMHC's definition or the way that they calculate affordability, which is based on the median income of the area, if that actually does, really truly translate to affordable rents, because we've seen anything you can charge from like a 1-bedroom to 2-bedroom anywhere between like $1,300 to $1,600, $1,700 up to $2,000 a month. Knowing full well kind of the living wage here and everything and the costs, that doesn't quite add up to what would be determined to be affordable under the way that, I think many people would look at it. That's why we defined affordability through the provincial programs, because those do translate to more affordable rents, where they offset not just the rent, but then they could also include utilities. So that's why, we have been so adamant about ensuring that these incentives are really provided to those developments, i.e. provincially subsidized developments that provide truly affordable rents.
Right. And I assume there's obviously all sorts of ways around various rent ceilings. I note that in a national study in the last 2 years, rents have gone up 16% in Prince Edward Island, in a place where there's a 1% rental cap. So there's ways around. But yeah, I understand the program about 400 times better than I did half an hour ago. So I appreciate that. Anything else on the incentive program? Amen. Thank you very much, Robert. That was great. Moving on to other business. The other business I mentioned was, do we wish to replace Ms. McDonald on the committee, since she has had to resign due to conflict of interest, being accidentally appointed deputy minister. So, not accidentally at all, but anyway, being suddenly appointed deputy minister. What are our feelings on that, committee members?
I think we should.
Well, no, go ahead, somebody.
Okay, Bill, you're first.
Okay, well, no, I was going to say, no, I really don't. I'm really not sure. I don't know what to say about that.
Okay, we'll let you think about it.
Let me off the hook, yeah.
I think having more people is better. I mean, we don't have. Sometimes we struggle with a little bit with participation and attendance at the meeting. So,
pretty good on attendance. Speaking as chair, sometimes we're shaky on participation. Okay.
So, I think the process is that the city has to appoint somebody. I think that's what it is. Correctly.
Alex, what would be the process?
With regard to this committee, I'm going to have to find that out, but it would either be the mayor would appoint the person, or the entire council would have. Maybe the mayor finds a name and then it has to go. That's the process for the planning board, but I'll have to look into that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it's clearly the politicians have to repopulate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of, is that the mayor exclusively, or would that be the mayor making maybe a recommendation and then which is endorsed by council? I think that's the way it works, but I'll look into that.
Okay,
Yeah,
I would think, yeah.
I understood it was endorsed by council. Yeah.
We were all appointed by council,
Right.
Through a process. Just as we were saying earlier, the city was a creation of, or creature, I guess we're using the term, same Latin root, creation of the province. This committee is a creature of the council. Yeah. Craig, what are you thinking? You still awake?
Craig had to step away, I think.
Okay, good. jealous. Okay, and Bill, have you come to a decision yet?
Well, I think it would be probably a good idea to have another member on this advisory board because, you know,
Okay,
as
so
somebody pointed out, there's times when people don't make it and we need to.
yeah, and we can always
the
use
more
another
heads-
brain. Trust me, we can
Yeah,
use
the more
another brain.
heads, the better quality of conversation we have.
Exactly. Okay, so Alex, if you check that out and get back, that'd be wonderful.
I'll do
I
that.
appreciate it. Are they still feeding you, Robert and Craig or Robert and Alex and Ellen, even when we meet on WebEx?
No, we that's only for a meeting, but I think we're going to be getting back to, I think maybe next month you'll find we'll be back to face-to-face meetings. So,
Okay,
well, again, that's when that happens again.
We owe you guys some sub sandwiches.
No,
Okay.
we can pop out after the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do a weigh-in for before and after COVID. Okay. Final thing is next meeting before we get to the calendar and figure out that date. The mayor passed along a request from CMHC representative to meet with us, and I kind of said, not this meeting because we're doing this city incentive program. Are we okay with inviting her to participate at our next meeting?
We don't. Do you know the name of the person?
I know her first name. I didn't remember. I can look it up. It's Michelle.
Yeah, I got a call from her for some reason. I have to call her back.
Okay, let me find her name just a minute.
I don't remember her last name. Michelle somebody. From
We're-
Moncton. She was calling from Moncton.
Cool. Michelle Richard.
Yeah, that's it.
She's calling from Moncton, is she? Okay. Well,
Well, she called me from Moncton anyway.
anyway, we'll make her walk across the bridge, maybe, or drive across the bridge. Okay. Okay, no problem. We will issue that invitation. I will respond to the mayor, and you can pass it along. Okay, and our next meeting is, as always, the third Tuesday of the month, and the magic
It's the
of
19th.
I knew you'd know that. I was going to ask you.
What date
Okay.
would that be?
The 19th of April.
Okay. Wow.
Good, because I can't even find April. Just a minute. Okay.
I'll be
Yes,
a year
April
older.
19th.
Yeah.
Okay. April 19th. Thank you all for participating.
And as far as we know, that April 19th meeting will be an in-person?
It's a wild guess at the moment.
Okay.
Depends on how many of the rest of us get COVID. And we send our best wishes to Ms. Graham for her quick recovery. Anything else today?
No?
Amen. Okay. Next meeting will be on the 19th of April, and we'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll move that, I guess.
That's the spirit.
Second.
And everybody will second it. All those
Yeah.
in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good. We got an aye. Okay, thank you all very much. I appreciate your contributions, everyone. Have a great
you.
afternoon. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and enjoy the Ides of March.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks. Cheers. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.